From benched for taking the knee to benched for not taking the knee.
We're through the looking glass, people.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie. Now, this is a lawsuit about a female soccer player who was allegedly benched for not taking the knee prior to a soccer game. The story starts with Colin Kaepernick, who was allegedly benched for taking the knee prior to a football game in protest, and I know there is some discussion or disagreement as to whether or not Colin Kaepernick was benched because he took a knee or benched because he was just not a very good quarterback, but there's only one way for that intro joke to make sense. So with all that said, this is a lawsuit about a female soccer player who was allegedly benched because she refused to take the knee prior to a soccer match. In the United States District Court for the Western District of Virginia, Roanoke Division, Kirsten Henning, plaintiff versus Charles Chugger Adair in his official capacity as the head coach of the women's soccer team at Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University, defendant.
Charles Chugger Adair.
Now, when I first read that this coach's nickname was Chugger, I immediately had to go to Google Images to see exactly what someone who bears the nickname Chugger looks like, and this is what Coach Chugger looks like. And I'm not showing his image for any nefarious reasons, it's just that when I saw his picture, I immediately thought of the actor named Rob Riggle, who you might know from such classics as The Hangover. Call this Hollywood-induced bias, but every character that Rob Riggle plays in any movie that he plays in is always an a-hole. So when I first saw this image, my first reaction is that Coach Chugger must be an a-hole. I know it's wrong, I know it's unfair, but when I saw Coach Chugger's image, the first thing that came to mind is when Rob Riggle was tasing Zach Galifianakis in the face!
In the face! In the face!
Introduction. Henning refused to kneel. A 3-year starter on Virginia Tech's women's soccer team, she remained standing while her teammates took a knee before a game last fall. Especially in 2020, kneeling before a sport event is loaded with political, social, cultural, and symbolic meaning. Henning's stance was costly. Too costly. Her coach dislikes Henning's political views. Because she refused to kneel, he benched her, subjected her to repeated verbal abuse, and forced her off the team. But Henning's coach is a state actor, and Henning's refusal to kneel is protected by the First Amendment. The Constitution gives college students like Henning, quote, the right to be free from such retaliation, end quote, for the protected expression. As a result of her coach's actions, Henning can no longer play the game she loves, despite having 2 more years of NCAA eligibility. This court should vindicate Henning's constitutional rights and award her legal and equitable relief. The facts of this case are not particularly complex. The bottom line is that Henning is alleging that she refused to take the knee with the rest of her team prior to a game, and as of that moment, life on the team became insufferable, intolerable. The coach berated her, demoted her, and she was finally forced to withdraw from the team, resign from the team because of the coach's retaliation. But what is somewhat more shocking is the allegations of what went on behind the scenes on a college sports team. The lawsuit briefly goes over the history of Colin Kaepernick. We don't need to go over that, but it gets into some allegations regarding Black Lives Matter. What started as a social media hashtag, BLM eventually became a more formal organization. As an organization, BLM became known for encouraging protests that often turned violent. It also adopted radical positions like defunding the police and eliminating, quote, the Western prescribed nuclear family, end quote. As the nation discussed these issues, so did the women's soccer team at Virginia Tech. And this is where we get into some relatively surprising allegations as to what goes on behind the scenes on university campus today. On September 1, 2020, the Student Athlete Advisory Committee at Virginia Tech discussed how the school's athletic teams should show support for the social justice movement. The committee's advisor was Raina Gilbert Lowry, a senior associate athletic director at Virginia Tech and Coach Adair's supervisor. Gilbert Lowry is a vocal supporter of BLM. The committee thus discussed proposals to have Virginia Tech's student athletes wear BLM masks, BLM wristbands, BLM armbands, and BLM shirts during pregame warm-up and games. A lot of students and staff supported the proposals, but others didn't, including Henning herself. But Henning quietly dissented. While Henning supports social justice and believes that Black Lives Matter, she does not support BLM, the organization. She disagrees with its tactics and core tenets of its mission statement, including defunding police and eliminating the nuclear family. Henning expressed her disagreement with BLM and the various social justice measures the team was discussing privately to other players. Someone took a screenshot of some of these private messages between girls on the team and shared them with the coaching staff. Some of Henning's teammates also saw the messages and became outraged. After learning the content of the messages, a contingency of players called Coach Adair on September 3, demanding that he address the fact that some of his players were, quote, racist, end quote, and did not support BLM. The next day, Coach Adair and other coaches were overheard discussing the players' political views. The coaches speculated, mockingly, that some of the players and their families probably thought, quote, all lives matter, end quote. Bear in mind, as I always say, these are merely allegations of one of the parties. These are not yet proven facts, and reading this lawsuit, these are relatively summary allegations in the first place. But reading these allegations allegations, they certainly give you the gist for what is going on campus these days and how politics ruins everything, especially sports. Meanwhile, shortly before the team's season opener against Virginia on September 12, the team was informed that the Atlantic Coast Conference had drafted a, quote, unity statement, end quote, that would be read before every ACC game. The team was not told, and Henning did not know in advance what the unity statement would say. The unity statement was read shortly before the Virginia game. All starters, including Henning, were standing on the field at the time. While other starters knelt during the unity statement to mirror Kaepernick's protest and to express support for BLM, Henning remained standing. The lawsuit then goes on to allege that Coach Adair retaliated against Henning's defiance of the unity, pulled her out of one game, berated her during practice on other occasions, berated her. At practice the next week during a film session about the Virginia game, Coach Adair again berated Henning. His verbal abuse was repeated, targeted at Henning, and had nothing to do with the actual game or her play. Henning understood that it was a continuation of the politically motivated retaliation that Coach Adair had started during halftime. Again, these are as yet unproven allegations. These are Henning's own impressions. They will have to be proven in court. Take them for what they're worth, but this is her impression of what happened. And then we get into more allegedly retaliatory conduct, which includes demoting Henning even further in the soccer team. Henning was unexpectedly removed from the starting lineup for the next game against Clemson on September 17. Coach Adair let her play only 29 minutes total, and he played her in a position she had never played before in college. Virginia Tech lost the Clemson game 0-3. Coach Adair's conduct in the Clemson game was based on Henning's political views and her refusal to kneel, not soccer or her play. The player he started in Henning's place was new to the position and struggled the entire game. Other players, past and present, parents and fans expressed confusion about why Henning did not start and why Coach Adair was letting someone struggle in her position instead. The essence of these allegations are to the effect that Henning was actually a great soccer player and her demotion had nothing to do with the quality of her play, to support the argument that her demotion was strictly retaliatory because she did not take the knee and Coach Chugger didn't like it.
In the face! In the face!
Coach Adair's campaign of abuse and retaliation made conditions for Henning so intolerable that she felt compelled to resign. Henning did not want to leave, but given no real choice, she resigned on September 20. When she left the team, players, past and present, parents and staff sent messages of support to Henning. Players understood why she left given Coach Adair's abusive behavior. Staff were disappointed to see her go because she was a hard worker, a skilled player, and, until Coach Adair sidelined her, an important contributor to the team on and off the field. One staff member lamented that Henning's departure was caused not by soccer decisions, but by, quote, outside forces that have been brought inside the program, end quote. By, quote, outside forces, end quote, he meant BLM and the controversy over Henning's opposition. Those are the pretty straightforward allegations of the lawsuit. They may come as a surprise to some, though they probably will not come as a surprise to many, and then we get into the alleged constitutional violations. The First Amendment, as incorporated against the states by the 14th, protects the freedoms of speech and association. Just as much as it protects the positive rights to speak and associate, the First Amendment safeguards the negative rights, quote, to refrain from speaking, end quote, and, quote, to eschew association for expressive purposes, end quote. These protections do not, quote, apply with less force, end quote, to college students. To the contrary, quote, the vigilant protections of constitutional freedoms is nowhere more vital, end quote. College students, quote, must always remain free to inquire, to study, and to evaluate, to gain new maturity and understanding, otherwise our civilization will stagnate and die, end quote. But while freedom of expression is one thing, the protection from retaliation is another. Because state actors cannot, quote, produce a result which they could not command directly, end quote, the First Amendment also prohibits, quote, retaliation, end quote, against students who exercise their rights. Put simply, quote, official reprisal for protected speech offends the Constitution, end quote. This will all be a question of evidence on the merits, but this is the essence of the lawsuit. Coach Adair retaliated against Henning for exercising her First Amendment rights by benching her, launching a campaign of verbal abuse against her, and effectively forcing her off the team. These actions, both in isolation and in combination, would deter a person of ordinary firmness from exercising her First Amendment rights. Coach Adair took these actions under color of state law. Soccer coach, quote, functioning in his capacity as a coach, end quote, is, quote, a state actor, end quote, under Section 1983. If Henning rejoined the team without a court order, Coach Adair's illegal retaliation would continue. His abuse toward Henning was prolonged and repeated, and it ended only when Henning left the team. Both the team and the ACC, moreover, will continue to take collective action in support of BLM. The ACC has announced that the unity statement, for example, will continue to be read before every game in 2021. And then we finish with the prayer for relief, which is for a declaratory judgment, a permanent injunction, and various types of damages. A declaratory judgment that Coach Adair violated violated Henning's First and 14th Amendment rights, a permanent injunction ordering Coach Adair to undergo First Amendment training, to let Henning rejoin the team, and to take no adverse action against Henning based on any exercise of her First Amendment rights, compensatory damages, punitive damages, nominal damages, Henning's reasonable costs and expenses of this action, including attorney's fees per 42 U.S.C. Section 1988 and all other applicable laws, and all other relief that Henning is entitled to. And that is the lawsuit. It's all going to be a question of evidence, and it is going to be very difficult to make the evidence of intentions, which is basically what this lawsuit is built on. That being said, I think we can all agree on a few things here. Everyone should have the right to protest. No one should be compelled to protest, and
politics ruins everything.
And with that said, if you like my videos, you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of these support links are in the pinned comment. We've got PayPal, Patreon, subscribe to our YouTube membership. We've got merch, anti-media. Robert Barnes and I do weekly live streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. We are also on vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
All of my content is also on Rumble, which is now live stream capable. But more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!